to please honor this baby's life. Please, if you know who did this, please turn them in. These people are a danger to all of us. And people have talked about people walking with carrying weapons at University and Pryor, and it's very serious, but the reality is this: Georgia is an open carry state. So the sad part is that they can walk around with weapons this long down our streets because the law in Georgia says that they can do it. So you got people walking down the street with weapons this long because Georgia law says it's okay. If you know who is out there, and not just Sequoia, everybody else who got shot last night and who's been shot over the past several weeks, you cannot be silent. Your silence will not protect you. And what I want to see from us, I want to see the same anger and outrage. I want us to see it on behalf of Sequoia and all the other people and children who are getting shot in our streets. It's a lot of change that has to happen across this country. And police reform is a big part of it. But we also got to reform our own communities. An 8-year-old girl was killed last night because her mother was riding down the street. You don't want somebody on the streets who would shoot into a car randomly. If you know them, you need to turn them in. If you think you know anything, you need to speak it and you need to say it. Because if Sequoia was not safe last night, none of us are safe. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Bryant for additional information.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be speaking specifically to the incident that occurred last night. Last night at around 9:50 p.m., officers were dispatched to a person shot in the area of University Avenue and I-75-85. The call advised they were heading to Atlanta Medical with the shooting victim. Upon arrival at Atlanta Medical Center, officers met the occupant of the vehicle and determined the shooting victim was an 8-year-old child. The child received treatment at the hospital but did not survive her injuries. The preliminary investigation indicates the victim was riding in a vehicle with her mother and adult friend when they exited the interstate to University Avenue. The driver was attempting to enter the parking lot at 1238 Pryor Road when he was confronted by a group of armed individuals who had blocked the entrance. At some point, someone in the group opened fire on the vehicle, striking it multiple times, striking the child who was inside. The driver, yes, ma'am. The driver then drove to Atlanta Medical Center for help. Atlanta Police homicide investigators are working to determine the circumstances surrounding the shooting and to identify the suspect at this time. The investigation continues. We need the public's help in finding and arresting the people involved in this senseless act of violence. An innocent child lost her life, and this cannot be tolerated in the city of Atlanta. We're asking that the community reach out and contact Crime Stoppers and give us any information that they may have as it relates to this incident. Again, we cannot tolerate this level of lawlessness. We cannot tolerate losing a child from the city of Atlanta. We have to do a better job as a community, as a police department, and as the citizens that live in this city. We can do better. We will do better. And as I spoke to the mother earlier, I assured her that we will work diligently to ensure that we bring these perpetrators to justice.
I just want to touch on something else before I turn it over to Sequoia's parents. We had a lot going on in Atlanta last night. Our 911 system was flooded last night. We had people trying to burn down a Georgia State Patrol building last night. And it's my understanding that we now have people marching to one of our zones. When all of this is happening all at one time, even when we have all of our officers show up, which, by the way, they did last night. We didn't have any massive sick-outs last night. It begins to stretch our resources thin. And so I just want to remind everyone out there who is interested in participating in peaceful protest in the same way that protests happened throughout the civil rights movement. There was a time to go, and there was a time to pull back. So if you are a part of a protest or a demonstration that looks like it's going the wrong way, that's your time to pull back, because you are no longer a part of the solution. You are a part of the problem. There are thousands of people who are gathering peacefully to try and effectuate change in this country. And then there are those who are wreaking havoc. And they are doing it to the detriment of us all. In this case, it is to the detriment of the life of an 8-year-old child. So if you want to take a history lesson about how you make change, if you don't have time to read a book, go watch Selma, the movie. Think about when they got on the bridge and they got ready to walk over the bridge, and Dr. King said something's not right, and they turned around and they walked back. There may be times during this movement that's happening that you need to turn around and walk back. Because if you are a part of these gatherings that are becoming disruptive and becoming deadly, then on your hands too is the blood of Sequoia Turner. So I ask you all, please continue to gather peacefully. But if it looks like it is turning into something more than a peaceful gathering, please, please remove yourselves so that we can identify who the people are amongst us wreaking havoc and killing our children. All right. Mr. Williamson and Ms. Turner, did you all want to say anything?
Help me. Help my baby. She was only 8 years old. Right now it's 30 minutes after the 6. She would have been on TikTok dancing in her phone. Just got finished eating. We understand the frustration of Rayshard Brooks. We understand. We ain't got nothing to do with that. We innocent. We didn't mean no harm. My baby didn't mean no harm. Somebody knows something.
They say Black Lives Matter. You killed your own. Killed your own this time. Just because of a barrier. They killed my baby because she crossed the barrier and made a U-turn. You killed a child. She ain't do nothing to nobody.
They didn't give us time to make a U-turn. They started shooting on my car before we could even make a U-turn. shooting my tires out. Like, why?
But Black Lives Matter.
My baby was shot in her bed.
Killing your own.
Nobody there to help
You
me.
killed an 8-year-old child.
Nobody.
She ain't did nothing to now one of y'all. She just wanted to get home to see her cousin. That's all she wanted to do. She just wanted to get home.
She died in my arms.
No, and the sad irony of this, you all watched the video of Rayshard Brooks. He talked about wanting to get home for his daughter's 8th birthday.
Birthday. We ain't doing that thing. We didn't do anything.
We just tell you all about this Wendy's location. The time for this.
I just want to say something on behalf of our family. We're going to get through this because we are just that, a family. Whoever did this, we asking the public, we are pleading, call Crime Stoppers, call the Atlanta Homicide. If you're in a different county, DeKalb County, call DeKalb County Homicide. If you see this person in a vehicle, get a tag number, something. We are pleading with you to come forward for this. We are pleading. This is a child life gone too soon. We are pleading. Anybody, if you know anybody that knows somebody that know this person's a person, please, we beg you. We beg you, please, please. Let's do this, bring this in for justice. If you out there and you hear this plea for a family to be able to sleep better at night, because Sequoia, my 8-year-old beautiful niece, got taken away out of nothing. I ask you to please just turn yourself in. Please, turn yourself in. This is your friend, your neighbor, your cousin. Please, please. We urge you, we beg you, please, call Crime Stoppers, call Atlanta Police, DeKalb County Police, whatever police, call somebody so we can get this case settled and get justice for Sequoia. Please. Thank you. Thank you.
So we had, as I mentioned, sent people in the day after the funeral to begin to clean the area out. At the request of Councilmember Shepherd, our public safety chair, and our city council president, we had not completely closed the Wendy's location yet, given an opportunity to have discussions, giving them an opportunity to have discussions with the people who were still at the Wendy's. Well, we're not having any more discussions. It's over. It's over. We're not gonna keep. We're not doing this. It's over. So again, I tell you, if you are looking to be a part of a solution and not a problem, then you're going to have to clear out of that area. Because this discussion and mediation and it's over. At the point that an 8-year-old baby is killed, the discussions have ended. Do you have anything else?
Excuse me. As the mayor stated, last night we had a unique night as it related to what occurred during the 4th of July. We actually had 6 incidents involving shootings where 23 individuals were actually struck, and out of the 3, we had out of the 23, we had 3 homicides. And that was a very challenging night for us last night. Additionally, we had a traffic fatality and assisted, as the mayor stated, Georgia State Patrol as it relates to the incidents that occurred at their troopers' headquarters. And the mayor stated it clearly that our posture has changed as a result of how we will handle certain given situations. Again, we are in full support of those who are willingly to protest peacefully. But once we recognize that an individual is violating the law, we will assure you that we will take action. We cannot be in a space, it is clear that even in some of these peaceful protesters, that there are those that are infiltrating that with a whole different agenda. I think the mayor stated it clearly that one of the things that we must do for those that are in those peaceful protests is to separate themselves and point out those agitators and the people that are not part of their protests. That has been the most difficult thing for us to be able to do, is to manage a peaceful protest that is being overtaken by violent actors or agitators. And so going forward, we'll continue to support any level of peaceful protest. But once those protests start to take a different direction, we have no other alternative but to take action and address that accordingly. And that will be the stance that the Atlanta Police will take going forward. Thank you.
Is there any question?
Multiple times you've stood up here and you've called on peaceful protests, but it continues to get worse and worse. Have you sat down with the chief? Do you guys actually have a plan in place to address what's been happening?
Well, the reality is this: we have multiple peaceful protests each day. So it actually is not getting worse and worse. It's been getting better, but then we have these flare-ups, like the flare-up we had with the people trying to burn down the state patrol last night. And so I would say for every 100 gatherings, then we have an incident. And, you know, it's frustrating because then we have to start diverting resources. And, you know, I just think it's time for all of us to take responsibility and to be responsible during this time. This is not the time for us to pull back on the number of people we have on the street. This is not the time for us to throw up our hands and say we're you know, everybody needs to be responsible during this time. I'll just say that. And that goes from every single elected official down to all of our police officers. And again, last night, all of our officers showed up. You know, and there have been these questions about whether or not I support our officers. I continue to support our officers. I've never stopped supporting our officers. I appreciate the jobs that they do, and I've said it repeatedly. When my nephew was murdered in a case of mistaken identity, who did I call on? I called on APD to help solve his murder. So I personally know how important our officers are. And I've met Chief Ryan when he was my zone commander in Zone 4. So I know what a good working relationship with our communities look like, and I continue to support that. But it's a tough time in our communities right now, and it's a tough time on our officers right now. We're catching it from every single side. And I just go back to something one of our student activists said during a meeting I had with them. He said, we got to stop having this us versus them conversation. This is a we conversation. For us to get out of this where we are, this is we. This is all of us working together saying we all perhaps have fallen short and can do better. But it is extremely frustrating to have the entire nation, this diverse gathering of people, proclaiming that Black Lives Matter. And then you have two black men shoot a baby in the backseat of a car. That's frustrating. And I'm just saying, all of us, we all have to do better. We all have to do better. And this is not about the people who are gathering peacefully. This is about the people who are standing by where people are wreaking havoc and killing children, innocent people in our communities.
One follow-up to that, and Chief Bryant can answer this as well. You just mentioned, obviously, you support the police. I've spoken to Black, white, Latino officers, and they feel like in the two cases that have obviously made headlines that they didn't get their due process, and there was a rush to judgment, and they feel as if when they're going out to police that they are, no matter what they do, whether it's justified or not, they're going to get charged and at least convicted in the court of public opinion. They don't feel like anybody has their backs, and therefore they, what they've told me in conversations, they don't want to be proactive because they're scared. They have families to go home to. So are you able to guarantee to them that if they do their job and the oath they took, that they will be able to go home to their families?
So let me just address that, and our city attorney is here, so she'll correct me if I'm wrong. You know, and I'm very mindful of bringing this up about the historic pay raise that we gave the police officers, because I don't want anyone to think that I think this is about us paying more money. But the point of my bringing that up is that I didn't have the support of a single police union in the city, state, or country. When I came in, I felt like our officers were underpaid when I came in as mayor, and they deserve more money because they shouldn't have to work 3 jobs, and they should be able to go home to their families and not be fatigued and resentful about policing in our city. So that was the commitment that I made, even when they didn't agree with me being the mayor. That commitment stands. But the reality is that as mayor, I have the authority to hire and fire every single employee that we have. That's the reality of my being mayor. And the union that says it represents our officers don't even have a formalized agreement with the city. There is no collective bargaining agreement. As a courtesy, which I think is an important courtesy, we allow them to say that they represent our officers. But I think with that comes a responsibility. So you claim it's politics, but yet you have a Senate, someone running for Senate at your press conference. That's what the union did. So I said it and I'll say it again. I made the decision to fire the officers, which as mayor and the CEO of the city in charge of 8,000 plus employees was my prerogative. Paul Howard made the decision to charge the officers. Paul Howard did not consult with me. He made that decision. And people can go to the polls and express how they feel about that decision in a few weeks. What I've also said is that in addition to those use of force cases, there are at least 17 other ones that have been sitting on Paul's desk for over a year. My request is deal with those use of force cases as well. Because in the same way, Rayshard Brooks's family wanted swift action, The college students' families want swift action. Jimmy Atchison's family is waiting. Oscar Kane's family is waiting. And the 15 other ones sitting on the desk. So, to the extent that I have inserted politics in any of this is because I'm a duly elected official as mayor. And that responsibility includes the firing of employees, which I made that decision. I will own that decision. That is not an indictment of our entire police force. In fact, my mother used to work at the police academy. I have a great deal of respect and regard for our police officers. But what happened last night with this little girl wasn't about police officers pulling back. Nobody pulled back. Everybody showed up last night, and I appreciate it. Because even in the midst of how our officers are feeling right now, they're still showing up, and they're still doing an honest day's work. This is about some people who don't have any respect for life and the life of a child. That didn't have anything to do with our police officers last night. Yes.
Mayor, should the gathering in Wendy's, should that have been disbanded earlier?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about that, Scott, I rode past there this week. I rode past there about 9:30 one day this week. There were just a few people out there. There were some people, there were some tents up. There were some people walking through the parking lot, looking around. I rode through University, you know, I was able to get through. So it's been these flare-ups. So, you know, based on what Secoria's mother said, somebody shot from Wendy's and from the parking lot of the package store. So even had the Wendy's been completely cleared out, somebody opened fire in the parking lot of the package store. You know, I mean, I have 4 kids. My youngest are 9. So, I mean, this is terrible. I cannot begin to imagine the pain that those parents are going through. But even if nobody were in that Wendy's parking lot, somebody in that package store parking lot shot that little girl in the back seat.
I just want to clarify, so the shooting was provoked by them crossing some kind of line or barrier, and then if people are civilians were to return to the area of Wendy's tonight or in the future, will there be specific actions and what would those be?
I'm going to let Chief Bryant speak to that. But again, I'm just reminding you all, Georgia has an open carry law. Unless somebody is pointing a gun or doing something unlawful with that gun, that simply because they're walking around with this gun doesn't give us probable cause to stop them. But I'm going to let Chief Bryant speak to that. And Nina, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but.
So as it relates to how things were set up last night, we got the report that they had begun to put items into the street. Prior to that, we had not had any reported incident that they were doing this. Based on the information of evidence that we have collected, is not determined. We can't fully determine if they had actually crossed that barrier or they were approaching a barrier, but they were attempting to get into the package store. What we do know is based on the information that the mother gave, they were challenged as they were trying to enter into the package store. So if they actually crossed the barricades, that's undetermined at this time because investigation is continuing. However, and as well as the mother actually left the scene to take her child to the hospital. So they weren't actually on the scene for us to really have a investigation there. But we will be able to flesh that out during our investigation.
And then as for later tonight, if people, armed civilians were to return, just because of the proximity to the Wendy's, would there be anything done, or would you let?
So that it puts us in a very unique space because the property at Wendy's is actually private property, is not in the street. I can assure you that we are not allowing anyone to enter the city street and block any streets going forward. that will not happen. We are continuing to monitor that throughout the night to make sure that I'm kept abreast to make sure that that street remains clear.
Last one. Do we have, do you have video of what happened? Do you have descriptions of the suspects? Do you know anything about these individuals?
We do have some vague description of the suspects at this time. We are looking over video, gathering video information so we can take a look at that. Whatever we have, you will be assured that we'll push it out so that we can get the assistance of you and the public at hand.
I just, let me clarify something, because I know you all will come back and ask about this. Chief Bryant said we didn't have any reported blockings of the street. So the first time this week that I got a message that the street was blocked was about 45 minutes to an hour before the shooting. So that's not to say they hadn't blocked it, but nobody has reported it. And also 911 was flooded last night. So it was very difficult, especially, and this is just something for the public to keep in mind. If you call 911, don't hang up. Because sometimes people will hang up, call back, hang up, call back. It's going to put you in queue. Just hold on a couple of minutes and give an operator an opportunity to pick up.
Were you here in town for everything last night?
Yeah.
When did you think you got the text message about 45 minutes after?
Yeah, I will have to look back because I looked at it when I talked to Chief Bryan about Sequoia. I said, I just got this message that, so what was that, about 8:45 or so?
9:40, I think it's about 9.
Yeah, so I got the message maybe about around 8:45 or so that a report had just come in. They had put the barricades up, and then about 45 minutes later, I got the call about the shooting. Because it made me go back and look at the message. So I thought I just got a message on this. And I thought that the two were, at that point, I thought the two were two related messages that I was getting.
What do you know about the protesters? I mean, there's so many different people all over this protesting. The people doing the roadblocks, like, I mean, has anybody had conversations with them, or do they live in the neighborhood? Because it seems like we talk to church leaders who are right down the street, and they're like, I've never seen these people before. We just want our
I don't know.
neighborhood back."
Can you all speak to that?
Can a little bit.
Okay.
So, as a council member in that area, Wendy's is in my district. We had the community residents, and if you don't know, the neighborhoods, that's Reynoldstown, that neighborhood, I'm sorry, not Reynoldstown, Peoplestown. That's Peoplestown. So I had pulled together a collaboration working with Ms. Smith to begin to talk to the folks in the neighborhood in terms of their specifics on that. That included ministers also. We then began to go down and actually on the site and have began to interact with the folks who are actually on their site. And what Mayor Bottoms is saying is true. The folks there, we talked to them, had conversations with them in terms of what their needs were, what was their concerns, all of that. What we also did was we talked to them, we told them our concerns, and our concerns was very specific. The concern around the fact that the streets, there was danger. Folks who live in that community were scared to drive down University Avenue. That was one of the biggest concerns we told them, and that we just could not accept that. The police department a couple of weeks ago, I believe, week before last, actually stopped that from happening. And the next step was working with them is to say, and I have been talking to Wendy's along with the mayor's office in terms of actually securing this spot because folks was coming in and out of the Wendy's. So we began to have that conversation with them also. So some of the people out there were young men who were folks who basically just gathered out there. They started gathering out there as a result of the protests. There was a whole, I've been out there for weeks and weeks. There's a whole different element of the original people who were out there. The people who remained out there at this point were people who actually, some of them were friends of Rayshard Brooks. Some of them was even relatives of Rayshard Brooks. And some of them are folks who were basically saying that they supported Rayshard. So that was a cadre of them. And their position was that they were policing the site because they were not the ones who actually was doing the shooting. They were not the one that was doing the protesting that was violent. So we began to have this dialogue with them and began to have conversation with them. And I was sharing the information with the mayor's office along with Wendy's in terms of how could we talk about some of the things that could possibly happen. Unfortunately, by the end of this past week, that communication broke down. There was some mistrust issues. They stopped talking to me. We've been talking to the mayor about how we was going to go forth within the next week of barricading off the site. So we've been having conversations. There's a cadre of neighborhoods who still want to continue to have dialogue because we want to let people know in our communities, in all of our communities here, that this is our neighborhood. Some of the people who were out there were not people who actually had an address that was around the surrounding community. So these were folks who were just gathering there, other than some of the folks from the Brooks family, some other people. So, but they were people that we actually had a dialogue with.
Well, hold on. Chief Slaughter, I'm sorry, Fire Chief Slaughter is here. Is there anything you need to add? I know, Michael, you're about to pass out. I see you.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I would like to extend my condolences to the family. Really breaks my heart. What I would like to add is just I would like to remind everyone that the debris is actually very dangerous. And I was having conversations with Councilmember Shepherd last week. The people should really be careful as debris off gas for 3 to 4 weeks. And I was actually advising Councilmember Shepherd that I believe that the people actually should leave. And so I can't overstate the fact that I think it's a dangerous environment. That's all that I have, Mayor.
What kind of challenges have your firefighters had to face? I mean, obviously they've had to respond to shooting and some of the stuff that's gone on over the last couple of weeks. Can you hear about police officers and another person talking to you, talk about what your men and women are dealing with?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Going all the way back to the first Friday, it's been a very, very dangerous environment for our firefighters to have to respond under those conditions. If you can remember the night when the Wendy's burned, we actually had bricks and other debris thrown at the fire apparatus as they attempted to approach and actually extinguish the fire. So no firefighters are trained to fight fire under riot conditions. That's just not something we train them to do. So yeah, it does add an extra element of danger on top of an already dangerous situation, to the degree that I've had to mandate the firefighters to wear the body armor that we issued them a couple of years ago. So yeah, absolutely, that's a great question. Very dangerous for the firefighters to respond into these environments.
Is there a scenario where you guys wouldn't respond to something?
Yes, it is, because the safety of our firefighters is paramount. For me as fire chief, if their degree of hazard outweighs any element of good that we can do by responding on in, I'm absolutely not going to let them respond, especially if we can pretty well determine that there's no one trapped in the building. And that night at that Wendy's, we were pretty sure that no one was trapped inside. And so to allow those firefighters to continue to respond and risk their lives would have been really irresponsible and inappropriate.
Now, since then, have you had any trouble accessing the building for possible further evaluation? Are there continued barriers?
We have not, and I met with the command staff and we determined, especially in light of the fact that it's a very active and open investigation, that it would not be appropriate for us to be over there on site at this time.
Chief, were your officers on the way to take down those barricades? I mean, was anybody responding when you notified the mayor that there were barricades on at the site? Were APD responding to that action at all, or what was happening?
Actually, as stated earlier, it was a really busy night. It was planned for them to go by, but we were addressing more prior urgent matters during that time. But that's why we got the text, so that we know that officers had to address that matter as well. Thank you.